welcome to this episode of the Bo and Luke Show. I'm your co-host, Bo Bravo. I'm joined in studio with Luke Carrigan, our rock star dynamic co-host. This is going to be a fantastic episode. This is our first guest. We've talked real estate in the past, but this is our actual first guest, I believe, who is an actual agent and has helped thousands of other agents, has a really cool story. Lots for us to get into. Our guest is Jacki Semerau Tait. She's known as the Queen of Regional Real Estate. I love that. That's a good title. She's a top producing realtor. Pardon me?
Relational real estate.
Relational, not regional. Look at that, man.
You know, I think she might be the queen of regional
relationships.
She might be the queen of regional real estate too. I mean, that could also be correct.
Maybe. We'll find out, right?
Yeah, we're going to find out.
We're going to find out. Queen of Relational Real Estate. My mind was still focusing on pronouncing the name right. See,
well, you nailed the name.
Nailed the name, but relational gave me a problem, right?
It's all good. It's all
That's good. Right. We're having fun. Yes, but what's also cool is Jacki's a coach. She's a real estate coach. On top of all that she does in the world, she's sharing her knowledge with others and helping others succeed. And I think that goes right in line, Luke, with our show, Be Better, Know Better, Do Better, and trying to help inspire people, motivate people to do better in whatever their career is. And I'm sure all of the lessons learned today in this episode can help people in any industry or whatever they're doing. So without further ado, Jacki, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I was laughing when I was like, exactly what
you
Luke
could have
said.
Laughed out loud. It would have been okay.
I didn't know. Right. I was like, I don't know. You haven't done the official thing. But I was laughing. Like, good job on the name, though. You got that right. And I'm not sure I'm the queen of anything, but, my PR team likes that. So.
Well, good. Now they're going to have to incorporate somehow Queen of Regional Real Estate. So figures, hey, take this. Can we run with it? Do something, right?
That's fantastic.
So you can take an audio clip. Absolutely. So why don't you tell our audience just a little about yourself?
Sure. Well, like you said, I am in real estate. I've been in real estate since 2002. And when I got started in real estate, it really was just to handle my own personal investments. I had no intention of doing it for a living. But when I went to real estate school, I fell in love with it. So, I thought, I think this is what I want to do. It's what I want to be when I grow up. And so I got started working with clients, and then fast forward, and I was put in a position where I was able to coach agents as well. And so I've had a lot of fun taking the knowledge that I do in real estate and sharing it with other agents. And of course, you can't coach until you do. And so there was a lot of trial and error. And so my goal with coaching is to help get them right to the success part and leave the trial and error part behind.
Yeah, that's a good point. We tell people all the time, make sure if you need a coach, make sure they've actually done what it is that you're trying to do, and have the lessons, the real world lessons from their own experience to share with you so they can help guide you through your own journey. Yeah, that's super good.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So do people typically take the advice that you give them? Because like me, my journey was I just made, and I've talked about this on the show, I just went ahead and made every mistake in the world and then finally learned from it later in life. So I should have this is like a cheat code or a shortcut. So do most folks embrace this, or is there still just, the obligatory stumble before you hit it big?
I think it's a little bit of both. But I will tell you, it's why all my coaching is group coaching, because with group coaching, if 15 people show up, which I cap my group coach pods at 15. So 15 people show up and 5 do the work, that's okay. 5 showed up, they came to play. With individual coaching, sometimes it's too easy to make excuses. And so when you show up in that group setting, there's a little bit of that competition that I've learned over the years anyway, has helped inspired people to actually do the work. So, but I still think there's a little bit of both involved.
Well, and you've walked the walk. So in reading this sheet that I have in front of me right now, right? So I'm going to read for the listeners. So it says, after losing her house and having literally $4 to her name, Jacki found herself needing to recreate herself. Jacki, I think that's going to resonate with so many people. Whether we say it or not, I think most of us are been there. Are you comfortable sharing more about that story? Because I'm so curious.
I am not comfortable sharing that story, but I have decided to share that story very publicly.
I like that.
Because it's so necessary. So far my $4 story, I did contribute to a book that I wrote, co-authored with Les Brown, who is the greatest of all time motivational speaker. And in working with Les over the course of a year is really what helped me see the need to, okay, it's time to get vulnerable. It's time to share the story. And like he says, you share from a place where you've already been through it and healed. You don't share while you're in the midst of it because you don't have the answers yet. You haven't quite figured it out. So yeah, that's what inspired me to share that. So no, not comfortable, but I'm doing it anyway. But I will tell you that, yeah, I mean, my $4 story is very much ingrained in a period of time in my life where I had known success in the real estate industry for around 6 years. And then we hit the Great Recession. And certainly I wasn't the only one to hit rock bottom during that time, but I do share my story of when I did. And I came to a place where everything I had kind of fell out around me. No money was coming in, lots was going out. And I had to end up short selling my house and move back in with my parents. So here I am. I've known success. At this point, I'm a single mom. I have 2 elementary age daughters, and I had to pack everything up and move in with my parents. And I really did think, with as driven and hardworking and all of that I am, I thought for sure it's only going to be for a few short months. And it wasn't. It ended up being 2.5 years. So when I moved in with my parents, here I am thinking this is as bad as it gets. But, it was like God was sitting up there going, but wait, there's more. And I had a lot farther to fall. And that's where the $4 story comes in. So, I mean, I'm living with my parents. I'm doing everything I can to try and dig myself out of this hole, get myself back up on my feet. My background before real estate was in marketing and advertising. And so I had dusted that off, started trying to help some different businesses with their marketing. But again, everybody was suffering. And so I had some invoices out there for marketing that I had done, but they were slow to pay. And here I wake up, I've got a bank account that's overdrawn. I've got another bank account that's at flat zero. And in my wallet, I have 4 single dollar bills.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me was the low point. That was oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And so, in hitting that low point, it really does force you to reconsider, where are you? What are you doing? Reach out. Certainly, a lot of this, my faith got me through this, and a lot of other people, helped out as well. But it really did force me to start looking at things a little bit differently. And that's when, you hit the bottom and then you go, okay, now what? And the reason I'm sharing my story, there's a lot more to it, and as to how I got out, and I don't know how much you want me to share, but the reason I'm sharing my story is because I know right now we're hitting some tough economic times. Things have started to shift. People are starting to struggle. I'm especially hearing this from my Gen Z and millennial friends. And so I'm sharing this from a point of, listen, sometimes, we get so bogged down in those struggles at the moment, and it's hard to, pick your head up and see that there's going to be something more coming down the pike. And I'm trying to encourage people to just look up and look on your horizon. Know that this adversity and the struggle that you're going through right now will serve your higher purpose in the future. But you have to look out and grab onto that future and say, what do I want that to look like? And then you can back it into saying, okay, so how is what I go through right now going to serve that future? And then you can start to take the baby steps you need to do to get through that.
Well, thanks so much for sharing, Jacki, and being vulnerable to share that with everybody else. I truly, full disclosure, I've been there. I've absolutely 100% been there in my past, you know, and I think a lot of people have. They just don't talk about it. So good for you for talking about it, because I think it resonates with people. You know, I remember with myself just like having that feeling of like, because by the way, I hit that probably $4 point like multiple times. Like Bo knows, I used to work at Red Lobster when I started off in Chicago. So it was like day to day all the time. And I remember like being so pissed off and being like, okay, never again. I don't want this feeling ever again in my life. And that kind of really kept me going through everything, you know? So I just, you know, want you to know that, you know, I think a lot of people go through that. I want you to be hanging out alone on your podcast with your story, you know?
Luke, I
Yeah,
appreciate that. I really do think that everybody, that's one of the things I kind of say when I talk about this from stage, is everybody has a $4 story. I mean, a version of it.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah, that's what we
agree.
love about doing this podcast, because somebody's listening. Somebody's going to hear your story and be inspired by your story. They may be in a very vulnerable position today, and gain hope that they too can rise up and grab a hold of that future, which gives a different positive outlook on the next day, right?
It
So
does.
that's super cool. And now we know that the good Lord has a sense of humor, which
He
is
sure
important
does.
to understand,
I
right? Our
I could do
understanding is
an
not his
entire, I
understanding.
could talk to
Yeah.
you for hours all about how I believe he does have a sense of humor. Things that just
Yeah.
happen and you go, come on, really?
Do you think, Jackie, it's almost like a rite of passage? Because for me, and just from speaking to you for a little bit, I can bet you're probably the same way too. Now I approach everything in life differently from like a risk reward perspective, because my thoughts on it now is like, you could knock me down to $4 again tomorrow, and guess what? I'm going to get right back to where I was, only quicker this time. You know, do you have that same feeling?
You do learn so much in that process, and it does change your perspective. And that's one of the things that I encourage people. If you're listening right now and you are going through your own version of the $4 story and you're struggling to find that, you know, like, how do I climb out of this? It truly starts with your mindset. So the fact that you're even listening to a podcast like this says that you're on the right track. I mentioned I work with Les Brown. My favorite quote of his is that what you tune into, you turn into. And that is so powerful. If you are busy watching people complain about their lives on TikTok, you will turn into a person who wants to just naturally complain about your life. But if you tune into motivational podcasts like this, listen to motivational speakers, if you're faith-based, listen to sermons and pastors, reach up and reach out to things that will help shift your mindset to look at things in a more positive light. And when you do that, you're not going to be able to help but to turn into that person who steps into that positive life experience.
Yeah, that is super great advice. So let's take that, and then how do you help people become the best version of themselves? You have this topic that you talk about, you know, step by step to becoming the best you. So how do you do that? And if we take it from the mindset first, then where do you go?
Well, that's one of the reasons. So when I share this story, and I do have a gift for your listeners that they can download and hear the whole thing. But during this period of time, there were 7 principles that I learned through this that I've put together to say, listen, if you can take these 7 principles, you also can connect with your highest purpose. Because here's what I really do believe that, you know, Luke, you mentioned that when you hit the bottom, you see things differently. And is it a rite of passage? I think it really is, because there is a piece of us as human beings. If you think about it, you do not know how to be happy if you've never experienced
Isn't
sad.
that the truth? Yeah.
You don't know how to be successful if you've never experienced what the opposite of that is. And when I talk about success, that to me does not mean a monetary level of success. It can mean anything. So you have to define what success looks like in your world. But I know for in my world, like I said, I had known monetary success before I hit this bottom. And when I went through this, one of the things I learned is that I really was showing up as a paycheck player before this all happened. It was about the deal, the closing, what does your bank account look like? It was all the things that kind of the world tells us. It's the same vein that tells you really want a Ferrari, even though I could care less about driving a Ferrari, but the world says you need one, so you better go out and get one because everybody will see that you must know what you're doing. And I very much subscribed to that mindset before all of this happened. So after all of this happened, I will tell you, I show up so much different because I was able to find, number one, the why behind what I do. It's not enough to say, oh, it's for the deal, it's for the commission, it's for the money. It's not enough. If that's what you're playing for, you're gonna fall down. I'm sorry to say. Mm-hmm. So that's one of the things that I help people do, is to find, using these 7 principles to really connect with what is your highest purpose. What are you here for? I promise you, you were not placed on this planet to earn money and collect things. Not it. You're put on this planet for a much higher purpose than that. And all of ours are different. So if you use these 7 principles, you can really dig into what does that look like, and it can help you show up different.
Yeah.
All
absolutely.
about mindset.
I love it. Yeah.
All about mindset.
I
would say it just, and just for listeners, quit trying to keep up with the Joneses, because I got news for you. Most of the Joneses are broke. Like I try to think about this a lot. Like I'll try to analyze, like, okay, someone's got the beautiful house, these beautiful cars and things like that. I know what they do. Like, I'm in the employment business. I know exactly like a range of what they most likely make, even if they're killing it. Their debt to income ratio is outrageous. I'll tell you right now, they got way less than $4 in their pocket because they're upside down as can be. Yet in the social media age, we're comparing ourselves to this, but not thinking that they're on thin ice. And if they're making decisions like that financially, they're probably miserable in other aspects of their life and overcompensating for something, because maybe that's what they're looking for happiness at. But I do see people like comparing themselves. Oh, if I could just have that, if I could just have this. And you're like, oh, that might not be what you think it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I think a good example of that, Jackie, and you can probably attest to this if you're watching things on social media. So Luke and I launched an e-commerce store just a couple weeks ago. Hard launch yesterday for fitness, right? So it's called BeNoDoFitness.com, right? Well, there's all kinds of gurus out there that can, they'll flash their, we've helped clients, sell $100 million on their e-commerce stores, right? And we're the experts at this. And everything that goes through my mind is, if you can do that 100 million for others, where's your 100 million? Why didn't you ever do that did you ever do that for yourself? And it's never about them or their store. It's always about other people's stores, right? So that goes back to even to the coaching thing. It's like, you got to really be careful who you listen to. To take you or to what you think, how you think is going to determine what you do. It's so fascinating.
It's so true. And I think, when we're keeping up with the Joneses or on social media, how, everybody's kind of telling you, oh, I can help you do this, I can help you do that. I think with social media, more than ever, we're sort of training ourselves to try and do exactly that, to keep up with the Joneses. And then there's, people that go, oh, well, no, I'm just going to live my authentic life. And then that almost becomes they're showing off the bottom of the barrel. And it's in this weird way, like the flip side of things. And it's odd. So that's why I'm like, you know what? Social media is great. And I love YouTube. I'd rather watch videos on YouTube than regular TV any day. But you do have to be really careful. What are you allowing yourself to get wrapped into? Because when people are posting on, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or whatever, they're posting their highlights. They're not posting, their day-to-day, a lot of times, even the low points. Forget that. Like, there's so much mundane that goes into our worlds on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
So you have to embrace all of it, and don't get wrapped up in the fact that just because somebody else is, taking selfies of themselves in front of a luxury whatever, fill in the blank, doesn't mean that there's not, they're not eating ramen noodles at night.
Yeah.
So
Great point. Absolutely.
It's so true. It's so true. I'm just thinking about it. So when I bought this house I'm in now, by the way, so I'm thinking like how people can get upside down. When I was 35, I wanted to get you probably see this all the time from being in real estate. So I wanted to get pre-approved for my loan, and I finally started to do pretty well in life, right? And so I was like, I think we wanted like 400 grand for the house. It wasn't anything like ridiculous, right? So the company comes back and they're like, you're pre-approved for $2.5 million on a house. And then, Bo, you're like, I had the same response. I was like, first of all, I know I can't afford half of that. There is no way. Like, this is predatory. You should not be even thinking about giving me $2.5 million for anything. I won't be able to afford that for 3 months. Like, and I think I remember telling the bank that, like, that is absurd. Like, that was my first foray into where I was like, ooh, like, people could get upside down real fast. That would be bad.
That would be very bad. What year was that,
2016.
Luke? Do you remember? 2016. Okay.
So,
yeah. I mean,
housing prices were still somewhat low. Banks were starting to bounce back. Money was relatively easy to get, but I was like, Bo, I laughed just like you did. I was like, stop. Like, you do not want to do that.
Yeah, no, that would be a bad decision.
Oh, that'd have been awful.
So, Jacki, how do you help? First question is, and this kind of goes back to your comment about why you got into real estate, right? Because you just wanted to handle your own transactions. Do you find that in all the people that you coach, even in the group settings, that a lot of people get into it for that reason? Like to start? No, that's not common? Or you're not finding that as a common thing?
It's not a common thing where people get into it to handle their own business and then decide they want to work with clients. That's not very common. So there are a lot of people who will get their own, they'll get their license, represent themselves, do it for them. In real estate, we refer a lot of business back and forth. So if you have a license, you can become a referral partner for, another agent or things like that. So I think that's kind of common. But in terms of why do people get into the industry itself, I hear a lot of different, it's so vast. I coach our new agents in our brokerage. I lead our agent success program. And so it is interesting to hear a lot of people why they got in, maybe their mom was a realtor. A lot of times I will tell you that they work with a bad realtor and then they say, well, if you can do it, I can do it. So that's kind of common. The flip side of that is they work with somebody who does a really good job and they see what it does and how it affected their life and how it helped them. And they go, oh, I think I could do that. And they're inspired. So those are the two most common I see.
So then how do you help them develop the habits to be like the top, to get to the top? Because I can't imagine that, everybody who has a real estate license is just out there killing it, right? Lots of competition.
A lot of competition. And I think the thing that, when people get into real estate, a lot of times, because to get into real estate, you start by going to a school who teaches you the legal ins and outs. They don't actually teach you how to be a real estate agent. They teach you how to write contracts and, stay out of trouble, keep your clients out of trouble. What is escrow? How many square feet are in an acre? Those are the things you learn in school. Then you get out, and a lot of people don't understand that this is a career change into self-employment. They think they're going to get their license, they're going to go to work for a broker and they will be employed, and this is a job. And that is not at all. Real estate agents are our own boss. We own our own business. And so you have to treat it as such. So I think a lot of people, if they don't treat it like their own business, that's the most common reason why they fail. So that's what I try to help our new agents understand is what does it look like to be an entrepreneur? What does it look like to be self-employed? How do you build your systems around? What habits do you need to create to move the ball forward every single day?
Yeah, it's tough.
What are some of those habits to be a top 1% realtor?
All right. So here's what I'm going to tell you. And it is so not sexy and it is so basic, but it is the foundation. Is you got to pick up the phone. You got to make phone calls. You have to reach in and call people in your database every day. And if you can do that. And so I teach them how to do that. And what are your goals? What are you looking at? What does this system look like? I mean, we just did a whole breakdown and, for anybody, this can help anybody who's an entrepreneur out there who does have to actually make calls and set appointments and things like that. But there was a company that did a study, and to break it down to the ridiculous is for every 100 calls you make, you can set 2 appointments. Now within that, for every 100 calls you make, 29% of the people are going to answer. Of the 29% of the people that are going to answer, 50% will have an actual conversation with you. And of that 50%, 2 will set an appointment where you're going to get now face to face with them and have the opportunity to move the ball, forward even more.
Yeah.
And so if you break that down to the ridiculous, I look at it and go, okay, well, there are coaches out there who are going to tell you, so you have to make 1,000 calls a day. No, you don't. Not in real estate. Stop that. This is a relationship-based business. And this is not a cold calling business, although you can have success with cold calls, but that's another conversation. So the people you are calling, you already have some kind of knowledge and things like that. So if you can just make, if the breakdown is 100 calls to get 2 appointments, if you can make 10 calls a day and do that 5 days a week, statistically, you can set 1 appointment a week. That's 52 appointments. So let's say you're horrible at closing and you close only 50% of those appointments. You're going to close 26 transactions. Most real estate professionals, if they're closing 26 transactions a year, they will have an extremely successful book of business.
Wow.
So
I think that would be super important. Yeah, no, I think that would be the super important kind of stuff for people to learn, right? That if you don't know, you got to know, right? And then be consistent and disciplined and making your 10 calls. But if that leads to the potential to lead to 26 closings in a year, and that's a successful year, that's super important.
It is. And I think that's a statistic that, listen, that translates to anybody who has to make calls for a living. And then you just adjust the numbers of calls you need to make based on, well, how many do you need to close to have the business you want? And then adjust it from there. Another thing that I tell people too is you got to get reviews. So that's on the front end of things. You got to make the calls. On the back end of things, you have to get people to give you reviews online, because let's face it, we go on Amazon and won't buy a vacuum cleaner without reading the reviews. So you're not going to choose somebody to sell your house if you haven't seen that they're successfully working with other people as well.
Yeah, for sure. And now there's so much available online in the real estate world that wasn't there, decades ago, with things like Zillow and so forth, and information you can find. I know when I sold my house in Virginia, I think it was last year. I'm like, okay, this neighborhood, we got hit hard. It was a property I bought in 2006 before the bubble burst, and then the bubble burst and it dropped by over 50% in value, and it took a long time for it to get back. Right, so I sold it last year and I owned it for 17 years. I think I owned that house. So I'm like, okay, I need to find an agent who is successful at selling in this neighborhood, right? So when I'm looking at all properties sold in the neighborhood, like in the previous 12 months, I went to the one that popped up like 4 or 5 times, right, for that neighborhood. And that's the woman that I called. And sure enough, she sold my house, right?
Perfect. I love that.
Yeah, so I think it's the key to knowing, I would imagine, when you're coaching folks, that your clientele, your buyers, sellers, they're out there looking at what you've been doing, right? There's data points for them to find. And reviews is certainly one of them. Critical.
It is critical. And I think, it doesn't matter what your business is. I think, you need to get those reviews. And I will tell you, I'm actually kind of laughing because I realized I have a coffee mug that has my best review I've ever received written right on it. And I got this from my daughter. It says best mom ever. That's
There you
my
go.
best review.
That's so awesome.
So you gotta get those reviews.
That's
Not
right.
just for your career.
That's perfect.
That's
Absolutely.
so cool. Are there any
Awesome.
creative business development ideas you have, like outside of calling? Like, because I love just creative ideas. Aside from just like knocking on someone's door and being like, "Hey, I'm Jackie," but like, I don't know. Do you ever drop stuff by their house or
Well,
anything fun?
yeah, actually, that is a good one. One of my team members, they're called pop buys, where you pop by their house and drop off a little present. And one of the people on my team, she does a really good job with that. For me, I will tell you that one of the creative things that I do is my husband and I have a YouTube channel called The Empty
Ooh.
Nester Life. And it's not revolved around real estate. It's really just, when we became empty nesters, this is what we decided to do. I mean, I laugh and go, yeah, some couples golf together. We do a YouTube channel.
It's awesome.
It's
Yeah.
what we decided to do. And
Yep.
so it actually does bring in some really good business because we do house hunting. So when we travel, we'll do house hunting in that area. And we'll sprinkle in our real estate a little bit. And so we do get people who will connect with us. And what's great about that, if anybody has the inclination to do it, is that people get to know who you are and get to know your personality. So they're not even contacting us to sell their house because, we're like, oh, look at our statistics and look at how great of a job we do. They're like, no, we like these people. So we want them to be the ones to represent us.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's kind of fun.
Of course.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. We got to check that out. Say the name of the channel again, the YouTube channel.
It's The Empty Nester Life.
The Empty Nester Life. Okay, everybody listening has to go to The Empty Nester Life. You have to subscribe, you have to watch, you have to like, you have to make comments, right? That's how
right.
YouTube works. You have to engage.
Do all the things, like, subscribe, comment.
So I have another question for you. I think is super important for folks listening who might be considering or wanting to get into the real estate business and become an agent, right? You mentioned before, super, super important. You're not going to be somebody's employee, right? You might be under a broker, but it's your business, right? So you have to approach it as you are starting. You're going into the world of starting a business, right?
Absolutely.
Takes time to get clients, takes time to close on a house and get a deal done to where you're earning your commission. How much capital do you recommend that somebody have in the bank, because they got to live, right? Going into real estate, should they have, taken in two parts, if they just want to jump in and go full time, or if they want to keep working their day job and do it part time? What's your guidance for them?
Yes, if you want to jump in and do it full time, you have to have a minimum of 6 months reserves. I recommend 12 months because as long as you think it's going to take, it could take longer. So 6 to 12 months if you want to go all in and do it full time. If you're going to do it part time, that is a different beast altogether. And so in that situation, if you're still working and trying to transition into the real estate world, now it becomes more about budgeting your time more so than your money. And you have to figure out different ways that you can, okay, well, where am I going to put my time here? You obviously want to have some reserves anytime you're setting yourself up for any type of a transition into a self-employment situation. And in that case, I mean, to me, I look at it and go, well, I'm still going to stick with the 6 to 12 month minimum because if you find, and this is what most agents find, if you're working a 9 to 5 Monday through Friday job, it's going to be almost impossible to maintain that and get into real estate full, to like make that transition. If you're doing something that's maybe a little less traditional and you can sort of transition on some off time, then it's a little bit different. But my best advice, no matter what, is get a mentor. Work hand in hand with a mentor when you first get into the industry. Work with somebody who is already successful, come alongside of them, see how they do things. And that's going to severely minimize the amount of time where you're kind of struggling trying to figure it out. and it'll get you to full time much quicker.
Super good advice. Thank you for sharing. I think that's important so that people don't get in over their head, or they quit before they, they're even 3 months down the road because they realized they didn't have the money to support themselves while they were on this journey of becoming, a successful agent. I think that's really important.
So true.
Thank you.
It's like, with any sales forward job, I think because I've been in sales my whole life, and I'd say 1 out of every 20 people are like the super top performers that are out there. But the barrier to entry in sales is relatively low compared to other career paths that you could choose. Right. So I get it. Like, I understand that like maybe half the folks that are going to get in there are going to fail but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, you can learn, you can go try your hand at it and then maybe realize it's not for you. But it lends itself to that. I mean, Bo, recruitment lends itself to that as well. We have a lot of talent acquisition folks we talk to. Same thing. If you want to be a recruiter, like the barrier to entry to that, we're not talking about being an anesthesiologist here, Bo. Like, you can be a recruiter pretty easily.
Yeah, you just got to have the habits like Jackie's talking about, the right mindset, have some backup reserves, the appropriate for when you have months that maybe don't hit or the cash isn't flowing in that month, right? So that you don't give up, so that you're not forced to give up because you have no.
It's funny though, just how things work, that if you're great at something that has a low barrier to entry, the average earnings of that job are beyond what the ones with the high barrier to entry are. So like using the anesthesiologist as an example, or being CEO or something like that, you can make a ton more in sales, and people do. There's a lot more people in the country that do that. And it's fascinating to me that something that lends itself to where you can start and grow into that role, right? Can equal something where you could be double, triple what somebody that went to school their whole lives for is. That's fascinating.
Yeah, it certainly is.
That's an interesting point, Luke. Don't you find, like, I think it's just like what we were just talking about, that when the barrier to entry is low, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to get in, they're going to dip their toe, they're going to give it a try, and then they're going to go, not for me, and move on. But like you said, if you're really good at it, you can see where the holes are, and where, like, oh, I can see where somebody who's already successful does it this way. I'm going to emulate that, but then I'm going to put my own spin on it and take it to this level, because you can. When that, like you said, when that barrier to entry is so low, there's a lot of room to rise. It's to
crazy.
The top.
I got 3 stats I'm going to throw at you about sales you might not know, because I'm totally obsessed with sales. These are my favorite. So 1, highest average earning in the United States, sales. Here's another good one most people don't know. Lowest suicide rate in the United States by profession, sales. And this is the shocking one. Lowest divorce rate by percentage in the United States, sales. Isn't that crazy?
No kidding. I knew the first one. I didn't know the
divorce one was
2.
shocking, but once I thought about it, it makes sense. Like, sales is all about communication. For a relationship, you got to be able to communicate. So if you're a master communicator with other people, that should help your personal relationships.
Right? It absolutely should. That's a super good point. I like that. Super good point.
So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Jackie, this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is a great time. And like I said before we even started recording, I love your podcast and your mission. What you're doing out in the world is great.
Well, we thank you so much. Yeah, it's just all about helping people do better, and the whole mantra, be better, know better, do better, is it's a 3-step process. To be is you got to have the right mindset. Then you have to go seek knowledge, and then you have to execute. I mean, it's kind of that 3-step process. So we love talking mindset. We love giving people knowledge on different topics, different things that others have been through. Learn from that, right? That's the whole point. Learn from what others are doing. Not everything requires you to go to college and get a degree or go sit down and take a course. Listen to Jackie, right? She has great advice. You can learn so much. That's the whole point. And then you have to actually do something about what you learned or with what you learned.
Yep.
And that's probably the critical third step. You got to actually do it. Do something. So we thank you so much. We always give our guests an opportunity to give shout outs, give a plug, promote something, promote your book, talk about it, whatever you want to. So for the next couple minutes, it's the Jacki Show.
Oh my gosh. Well, here's what I will say is that I mentioned earlier that I have a free gift for your audience. So again, it's not about me. If you go to $4story.com, you can download, it's a free audio. It's me telling my $4 story in more of its entirety, and then giving you the 7 principles that you can use to find your higher purpose. That's really what it's all about, is how do we connect with our higher purpose? What are you here for? Not just here like in this room or in this moment. What are you here in your existence for? So that's what this is really built to help you connect with. It's not a long, it's like a 25-minute audio download. So definitely feel free to check that out. And then if you want to know more about me, my books, or my YouTube channel or whatever, you can find me at stepstostrength.com. It's got all my stuff. You'll find me. So
Awesome.
yeah, but no, I mean, honestly, like, I appreciate you saying, well, it's a Jacki Show. Go ahead. It's not about me. It's about, again, like, this is my purpose. This is what I have discovered, is that my higher purpose is really ingrained with helping to motivate and inspire others to live their higher purpose. That's what I'm here for. So
Awesome.
that's why I share my uncomfortable story.
Awesome.
Yeah.
We love
Just
it.
thanks
Luke,
so
any
much,
parting thoughts?
Jacki. Love what you're doing. Love that you share the story with others. I know it resonates with tons of people, even if they don't say so and they don't want to be vulnerable yet. At one point, they will. And just know that it helps a ton of people. Resonated with me, and I'm sure it does with others. So thanks so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Bo and Luke
Yeah.
Nation, you have been listening to Jacki Semerau Tait on the Bo and Luke Show. Take her advice. Go to the website, download the audio, and do it right now. Do not wait. And with that, that's a wrap.